I've always been fascinated by what makes places and people and politics in particular tick.
One of a kind.
That's the beauty of George.
Remembering George Negus.
Quintessential TV rock and roll star reporter.
And celebrating his extraordinary life.
Tell me their names and who they are.
I thought we weren't going to get out of number 10 Downing Street alive.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
What a wonderful life George Negus crammed into his 82 years. Not a moment was wasted. Equal parts adventure, politics, war reporting, even celebrity interviews defined the wide-ranging style of the always curious, often opinionated journalist. Of course, his death is particularly sad for us at 60 Minutes. Back in 1979, along with Ray Martin and Ian Leslie, George was not only one of the founding reporters on this program, he was pivotal to its success. But there was also so much more to George Negus.
How about a hand for this guy? This is probably one of the most popular television personalities we've got, George Negus.
The Israelis won't admit that they've got the bomb.
You cannot take photos. Yes.
Why not? Why can't we take photos?
I was an ex-school teacher, ex-high school teacher, and I sort of conned my way into journalism somehow.
6 p.m. with George Negus.
G'day, welcome to the very first 6 p.m.
Graceful.
You've got a pretty big chip on your shoulder.
I'm Ray Martin. I'm Ian Leslie.
And I'm George Fungus.
A typical Australian beach on any Sunday.
We didn't need George Fungus, we had George Negus.
Oh, little fella.
The moustache was bigger than most moustaches.
I'm George Negus.
And the opinions were greater than most opinions.
I'm George Negus. I'm George Negus. I'm George Negus.
When I hear George Negus's name, I hear a distinctive voice.
You realise that the whole idea of human rights in El Salvador today is a joke.
A voice that's asking a pretty sharp question.
So it's up to the young people to overcome the stupidity of the old people. I've always been fascinated by what makes places and people and politics in particular tick. Politics is the best way to solve problems without killing each other.
They describe you as an ex-boozer and womaniser. Ex.
Right, the X is definitely correct.
For both.
I heard your question.
And that's your answer.
You take a lot of convincing, don't you?
Some people even saw you as the Nelson Mandela of Malaysia.
Who is your worst enemy, Mr. President?
America.
America.
One has to ask you, why go back to Pakistan at all?
Pakistan is my country.
Don't be facetious.
Good talking to you.
Thanks, George.
When people say to me, when I meet you, you're just like you are on television. I said, no, you got it wrong. On television, I'm just like I am. And if you think you know me, you do. Which means sometimes you'll tell me how wonderful what I've done is, and sometimes you'll feel like chucking rocks at the set.
There was a time when they tried to bill her as a sex kitten, the American version of Bridget Bardot. But Jane Fonda, as she soon proved, was more of a lioness.
Well, 60 Minutes came out of the blue for me. I'd been very cheeky to the Prime Minister of the day when I was working at the ABC and got the flick. And Channel 9 called me. In fact, the then boss, Gerald Stone, rang me and said, do you like travel? And I said, who doesn't? He said, well, you better get used to it because if you take the job I'm offering you, you'll be doing a lot of travel.
Of course, there's the all-important passport.
I think George was the guy who really kick-started 60 Minutes in those early days to become the program it is. He was the quintessential TV rock and roll star reporter.
Why have you found it necessary to jail so many people who disagree with you?
It is not correct.
Sarah Palada is pretty much a law unto itself.
It became important to me that a lot of ordinary Australians are not being treated with the right respect. They were treating like they were idiots because they watch commercial television. Well, what we're doing turned out to be a little bit better than idiotic. Most of it. You're regarded as a great mimic.
Okay, you want me to do you? No, I'm just kidding.
That would be asking too much.
We set out at about 5 o'clock this morning from our base in Algeria.
The first time I saw George on television was clearly 60 Minutes, and I thought, who is that on the back of a truck with a scarf around his head?
Somebody actually said to me once that they thought the greatest contribution I made to Australian television was decide not to go to jungles and deserts, etc., with a coat and tie on. So I took them off.
But what the scientists fear...
I've had it said to me that quite often we looked like we were taking the audience with us, and in a way, yeah. We weren't doing it for our peers. No, it was the audience. The audience is what matters. I mean, I think what a lot of journalists forget, it's not about us. No audience, no program, no pay packet, no experience, no world travel, folks, you know. We don't have a job unless somebody's watching.
Even driving a car through their streets on the Jewish Sabbath is sin.
George Negus never wanted to be safe. That's boring. He is not that bloke that wants to be confused with others. And he never was, and he never will be, and that's the beauty of George.
Why do people stop us in the street almost and tell us that Margaret Thatcher isn't just inflexible, she's not just single-minded, on occasion she's plain pig-headed?
Would you tell me who has stopped you in the street and said that?
I thought we weren't going to get out of number 10 Downing Street alive, to be honest. But Gerald Stone rang me and said, how did the interview go? I said, as a political interview, I would give it 6 out of 10. And he said, and as an interview generally? I said, 11 out of 10. Don't worry, they'll watch.
Is it possible that you just won't give an inch? That Margaret Thatcher needs to be right all the time?
Why don't you ask them? And why won't you tell me their names and who they are?
He was a bloody good interviewer, but he had the sense of theatre. You really have to be entertaining. Now, that's not a sin. That's a great thing for television. And George did it probably better than anybody.
Hayes, and a very good morning to you all, and welcome to George, day one.
Nice to be here.
George had done 60 Minutes. George had done radio.
I'm George Negus, and next week on Today we talk to Jason Donovan. Why?
And I'm not sure what George expected when he came through the door at the Today Show, and I'm not sure what we expected. But I think it actually worked out okay.
And they tell me that very many, a great number of the people who have a look at that little character.
He grew to love us, and we grew to love him.
But this is a little bit like Mills and Boon put to music.
You're not dealing with Margaret Thatcher now.
Answer it.
I'll answer it and say yes, which I've said everywhere else.
I'd like to think I was the sort of journalist that I am, regardless of whether I was working for Channel 9 or the ABC or SBS or Channel 10. People say, how do you change it when you move from channels? I said, I don't. They've got to put up with me, whether they like it or not.
Halos get very heavy and they tend to rust very quickly.
What is your motivation? Would you call yourself a pure humanitarian?
Do I get paid for talking to him? No? Okay.
What did I say? Best to Saddam, best to America.
I guess it sounds a bit pretentious, but I would describe myself as an anti-war correspondent.
These kids way out here in the middle of nowhere are training to be guerrilla fighters to take on the Moroccan. As the US sees it, Nicaragua, under the Sandinistas, is another Cuba.
All that war proves is that the human race is unintelligent. And I'm a committed coward. I'd go so far as to say I'm a gutless wonder. I didn't get a buzz out of that kind of journalism at all. I did it because you had to get close enough to be able to tell people why you shouldn't be there at all.
Iranian enemy is just about within yelling distance across these marshes, and they outnumber these Iraqis by about 5 to 1.
I'd say to my young colleagues, you know, people who are still doing it, there's still plenty to do. In a way, most of us, all of us probably in the early days, we really thought we were changing the world for better. We failed, but we had a bloody lot of fun trying.
There is an audience out there who want to be told not just what's happening in this country and the world, but why. Unfortunately, not enough of you buggers watch us often enough. It's your fault, just joking.
And I think that's what I need to say to the younger journalists, to the new generations. The world's in a real mess at the moment, so don't worry, you're never going to be out of a job. There's still plenty of work to be done. All the best.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.